Welcome, Badass Manifester. I am so glad you are here. I'm your host and head coach, Ashley Gordon, master mindset and manifestation biz expert, founder of the Quantum Coaching certification, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur obsessed with empowering you to create quantum leaps in your energy, your life, and your business. This is the show to help you make magic your everyday normal, where the ripple effect is real and the guest experts are world class. My mission is to power your conscious and subconscious mind with manifestation teachings, business tools, and coaching techniques to put your potential into action. Consider this your weekly up level. Are you ready for quantum transformation? Let's do this. Hello, Badass Manifestors, and welcome back to the Badass Manifestor podcast. Today is a juicy episode. It is so good. I actually interviewed my cousin. His name is Karp, and he is a really well-known street artist in California. His business name is called KarPart, and he is a reformed corporate mechanical engineer turned painter and muralist, and he's all over Los Angeles. In 2018, he followed his calling to leave the cubicle behind and pursue his creative vision full time. And he has scattered dozens of colorful, whimsical, beautiful, breathtaking murals around the world. He is so freaking talented, but more than that, he has such a beautiful perspective on life. In this episode, we really dive into how he processes his addiction to validation through his dad that passed away, how he has moved through grief and really alchemizes the things that have held him back in the past, such as sex addiction and this need for constant external validation, and how it's helped him really own and empower who he is, what he does, the art that he brings into the world, and really owning his gift as an artist. His story is going to inspire you, and hopefully it's going to help you question your own validation structures and empower you to learn how to cultivate that energy from within yourself to really own your gifts in the world. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. And the way that we open it up is me just sharing very vulnerably and him kind of coaching me at the start of this podcast. So without further ado, I'm so excited, so proud of my cousin, so excited for him to be able to share his voice in this way. Enjoy today's episode. I've never interviewed an artist. I've never interviewed a family member, and I've never kind of interviewed anyone like you. I'm open to them.
Let's dig into it a little bit. Like, why did you start your podcast? Was it something that you felt like would be a good channel for you personally to sort of get stuff off of your chest and off your mind and like be inspired by, guests and the people that you connect with? And or was it, like a marketing chip, which is great and part of building like a bigger community around the ecosystem that you're building with your business, or is it both of those things? Was it intended as more one than the other?
Good question, Coach KarPart. I just had like this message that I wanted to channel out. It was just like, this is gonna help you. It was like an intuitive download of like, you starting this is going to be able to reach more people. So that's why I started it initially. And I mean, it's grown so much, like millions of downloads and so many episodes, like over 300 episodes at this point. So yeah, it's always been like this message that wants to like come out.
So when you feel that sense of boredom or dread, because I think that everybody who e- embarks on any creative endeavor, whatever the format is, I think we all hit that wall eventually where the thing that we set out to do, we've sort of done, or like we've created the blueprint for it.
Mhm.
And then it just kind of takes on a life of its own. And, creatively and emotionally, we meander to other bigger, different things and different projects. But then we have these children, if you will, that still are like living and breathing, and we have to care for them. So like
Yeah.
this podcast kind of being one of those examples. I like my murals are very similar. Sometimes I'll complete a mural and it'll get messed up and I just don't want to go fix it, but I have to.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like when you work on something for so long, you look at it and you're like, is this even fucking good? It might be different with art.
100%. Oh, all the time. I would say like this book is the first thing that I have invested that much time into that at the end of it, I didn't feel like, all right, I'm over it. I'm on to the next one. I don't even want to market this thing.
Whoa.
But I really, really fell in love with it. And like I fell in love with the product and what it stands for and what like the whole thing sort of represents. And it's the first thing that I actually feel like I created that I will stand behind forever, proudly. And that's hard. Like that rarely happens.
Well, maybe the book feels more permanent than doing a mural on a wall that could be repainted.
And often does get
It often
repainted.
does, yeah.
Hmm.
So maybe the structure of this is kind of just flowing already, where we're kind of just bobbing and weaving. And I want to kind of ask you, as someone, okay, so I want to hear how you got into what you do, because growing up, I know that you never thought you would ever be an artist. And I think a lot of people embark on their life and they're like, I think I know what I want to do, or I have no idea what I want to do. But what they end up doing is nothing even in the realm of what they thought it would be, yet it makes perfect sense for them. And I'm sure you feel that way to some degree, and I want to hear that story. But I'm also curious, like, because we were talking about you being contracted for all these different jobs and like all these different opportunities. How is it as an artist, like, to get paid for your work, painting something? Like, what has that process been like for you?
Yeah, it's very gratifying and it's almost unbelievable when it happens at first. Um, Early on, when I would get any, sales or commissions, I would sort of take the money and run. I would come through obviously with the artwork, but I almost didn't believe that somebody believed in me enough to, actually pay for what I was creating.
Mm,
Um, and we all have to go through that to an extent. That's that imposter syndrome, which stays with us like our entire career to an extent. But uh, eventually, I think if you love what you do and you put the time into it, in my case, I put thousands and thousands of hours into trying not to suck at painting. Like really, it's a function of, being chased by this monster of being terrible and just trying to be like one half step ahead of being absolutely horrific or what I consider terrible. And through that process, I've gained confidence in
mm,
collecting. So um, it's really hard to get paid as an artist because it's the lowest priority for every client that you have. For you, it's the most important thing in the world that
mm.
feeds you, that puts a roof over your head, that sets you up to be able to afford, investing in the next project or the next opportunity. But for the client, it's just an extra nice to have. It's like the least important thing that they're going to do that year is buy a piece of art or commission a piece of art. Um,
Interesting. That's an interesting mindset to hold, because I could totally flip that on its head and be like, well, what if it's actually the most important thing? Because what if it is a piece that you're doing of a loved one that passed away? Or what if it was something that was so important to them that trumps everything else? So
I
I want
wish
to
I
challenge
wish that
that.
were the case, and I think that it's a societal issue. It's like it's a broader sort of
Hmm.
problem with our economy and the way that we incentivize entertainers,
Yeah.
and creatives, and we put a lot of value in sports and in TV and in music, and those venues for entertainment feel urgently important to everybody all the time. Whereas I think like the fine arts feel people take them for granted almost. Like artists are interchangeable. There will always be a million artists and there will always be a million more.
Mm.
So while you might have like a pressing need to create something, especially if it's a canvas, I think that that can always happen. You know, like if you lose a loved one, you can always memorialize them. It doesn't have to be so urgent.
Right. I see what you're saying.
Nor do many artists want to sit around and paint pictures of dead people all the time.
Right. Of course. Of course. And we'll get into that for
Yeah.
sure.
So just to complete the thought,
Yeah.
putting in a lot of time and learning the hard way about getting paid for your work and time as an artist um, was just a huge learning curve for me. So it took years of failure and learning the hard way and doing things, for free or thinking that in good faith somebody would come through and compensate you for your time or your effort or your creativity, and that not happening. You learn to be more proactive up front about managing your business, about sending invoices, about getting a deposit, about asking
Right.
for a design fee, about putting contracts in writing, about specifying the number of iterations that you're going to do for somebody. All of these things you learn by not doing it and getting,
Yes.
screwed over effectively. And then you tell yourself next time, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So um, the process of getting paid as an artist for me has been a function of my own confidence in just asking for that payment up front.
Yes. And owning it.
Hmm.
Stepping into that identity of it's interesting because no matter who you are, what you do, like even in the beginning of my business, when I was like, I'm a life coach and I'm going to be a life coach and this is what I'm doing, I had no idea that I wouldn't just be working with people. I would also be a marketer and a designer and a Facebook ads person. And like I was going to be wearing all of these other hats along with just doing like my craft. So, like, no matter what, even as an artist, you are also running a business.
Right. And there's so much soft work and so much invisible work that doesn't get seen or appreciated by the end user of the things that we make. And that's hard. It's hard to explain sometimes when a project can take you maybe 6 hours to complete, um, but yet it requires like a really um, extensive fee,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard sometimes to help people justify why they're being charged so much for something that didn't seemingly take you so long to create when there's thousands of hours of preparation and practice that made it even possible to do that thing in the first place, let alone in 6 hours.
Yeah, so true. So true. I'm curious what you think of the art that is like a blank canvas, white canvas with like a black line through the middle that's like getting, you know, a crazy.
There's an audience for it for sure. Not to like get too hard on abstract artists. And I do think that there's a lot of really beautiful concept and theory in abstract art.
Yeah.
But I do find myself as like a patron of the arts and somebody who goes to museums and galleries every week, trying to keep my finger on the pulse of what's important in culture and who is getting shown and what the subject matter is and that kind of stuff and sort of what's celebrated in the institution. And I see a lot of that work that makes you say, I could do that. I call it like the I could do that work or just big art. There's a lot of art that hangs in museums because it's big. There's nothing else about it other than the size of it.
Yeah.
Um, which is more of like an engineering feat, I think, than any sort of like creative statement or masterpiece. So I try to look at things as they are, or like find the thing that is being celebrated at the institutional level about shitty art or the I can make that art.
Hmm.
But often it just sucks, and it points to again flaws in at an institutional level where you start to look at narrative and you start to look at like the things that separate talent from success and that like non-linearity between how good you are and how hard you work and how well you do
Mm,
because there's all of these like BS people in the middle that are sort of gatekeeping and giving opportunities to certain people as it benefits them.
yes.
And there's been some interesting, I think, like vertical narratives since. like COVID and since George Floyd that have really made that part of the art business interesting and challenging. But it's just continued to, I think, elucidate how corrupt it is and how flawed it is when it comes to just like mapping your success out. You just can't.
Such an interesting concept that you just pulled apart between like how hard you work and like your craft and the success. It's like really interesting. I never thought of that. I mean, I was on a I was at a workout and the teacher was we were at like a spin class and the teacher was saying he was in Miami, he went to this art show and he was just sitting staring at this painting that he was just like, I can do that art. And he was just baffled and confused. And I said to him after class, I said, I think there's an opportunity in there for you where it's like, I said, what do you want to do one day? And he's like, I want to own my own business. And I was like, well, if you want to own your own business and you want to like make up your own rules and you want people to have perceived value in you and your business, that piece of art can show you what's possible in a way where it's like, there's a lot of, it's all about perceived value where like everything is inherently meaningless, right? We're giving the meaning to it. And he was just like, oh, and I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, I can vibe with that. So just like a different perspective on, I mean, art itself is perceived value, isn't it?
Think when you start charging like and hundreds of thousands of dollars for art, then yes,
Yeah.
it becomes delineated from like the physical object itself and becomes
Yeah.
about something more ethereal, whether it's like just a financial uh, pawn in some like broader scheme, or it could mean something to history and culture 50, 100, 200 years from now. I think that piece to me is like more hopeful and more interesting than somebody investing in something so that they can get a return on investment financially.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, art definitely is sort of a window into now. And that is why certain artists hold such extreme value through time, because those are the lenses through which like history doesn't really give us insight into like how people lived
Mm-hmm.
in times that are gone.
So true.
It's
So,
interesting now too because we have like so much video. Like we can show future civilizations forever every piece of what it was like to be alive right now. So art isn't really doing that anymore. It used to do that. And like the art that sells for
right.
hundreds of millions of dollars like did that. And now that's seemingly not our role anymore.
It's so true. You're right. It used to tell the stories of the times and and now it's just up for interpretation. You're just like, what does that tell
Like I like that.
us? Yeah. Walking through the Uffizi in Italy. Have you been there?
Oh yeah,
Oh my God, that place is insane.
it's amazing. Or the Louvre.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. Um, so tell us a little bit about your journey into this identity of becoming an artist. Like how how did you discover it and step into it?
How short I can make this story. I went to undergrad at UC Berkeley for mechanical engineering. And my trajectory at 21, 22 years old was to become an engineer and, design cars or rockets or some, product that moves and is in that technology space. And I loved product design. I knew I wanted to work with people and take a human-centered approach to the engineering stuff, but that's what I was on. And at the time that I graduated, my dad was sick. He had some heart issues and he had an open heart surgery. So I came back home and just the way it all worked out was I got a job at this company called St. Jude Medical, which was a biomedical design company that focused on like cardiac rhythm management products. So it was directly related to sort of what I was going through in my personal life and felt like an opportunity to have a hands-on um, way of helping other people who go through similar things to what my parents go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that job. I had a cool sort of opportunity on that team to design a cardiac monitor from effectively a napkin sketch to full volume production. And that was awesome. That was sort of living my product design dream. I was doing something that felt like it was going to save lives and have an impact. I was becoming like a high rising, fast growing, cubicle star at my company. And at the end of that project, I got like a pat on the head and a $50 Amazon gift card. That was like the big thank you. And then they moved me under another manager because my creativity was way too much for my manager to deal with. And that was the beginning of the end for me in corporate. Like that, when I realized that, I could bust my ass and like push this company into like market cap that they didn't think that they could get, and then be treated like a threat, I realized that I didn't belong in that ecosystem. And so I started looking for ways out. I started looking for other jobs. I spent the next year and a half applying out to tech companies like Apple and SpaceX and Tesla and um, Meta and all of these companies that I felt like had a culture that could better support my brand of creativity. Um, and I was getting really far in the interview process, like getting flown out places, meeting with the team, doing like half day on sites, full day on sites,
Wow.
and then not getting the job at the last. Like between me and someone else, I was not getting it. And this happened like 7 or 8 times over, those 18 months, to the point where I started to ask myself if this was really like the career path for me. If I was meant to be a cubicle engineer, even if that cubicle was like an open pod with beanbag chairs in it, like would that still fill my cup as a creative and as a professional? And the answer was no. So um
Wow.
I randomly got a call from a VP of design at the company that I was working at. He got fired or resigned and took a severance package. With that money, he started flipping houses. At the time, real estate in California was booming again. He did really well with his first couple projects, and he rolled his first 3 projects into 7 more. So he
Mm.
bought 7 properties all at one time and then was completely overwhelmed, called me and asked me if I had any interest in being his architectural designer.
I remember this. I remember when you were
And
doing.
I said, I have no experience doing that, right? He's like, I know I hired you for the job that you're at now, but I believe that you could figure this out. And I
Wow.
was just so down to get out of the cubicle. And it sounded like an awesome, like playing Sims in real life, like
Right.
building a house with the Rosebud cheat code. And um, the properties are in Malibu and Palos Verdes and Laguna Beach. And it just felt like an awesome dream opportunity to go make some real money flipping houses. And I took the leap of faith. I joined him. At that time, I had a lot more free time on my hands because I was just home. And then when I wasn't home, I was on site, like supervising a construction crew, but I didn't have to be there all the time. So I was home a lot more.
You weren't in a
And
cubicle anymore. No more
I
cubicle.
was free from the cube. And my drives were long. So I would be commuting from Hollywood to Laguna Beach or Hollywood to Malibu or
Mhm.
Oxnard. And I would sit on the same stretch of freeway 3 times a week for 2 hours or longer each way.
Wow.
And to avoid falling asleep, the only thing that changed on my drives was the graffiti on the highway. And so I would just obsessively take note of the graffiti on the highway as it changed, as it got buffed out, as the new pieces went up. I was starting to remember people's names and their styles and noticing graffiti crews. And that just made it fun for me to keep driving um, and
Wow.
endure, hours in bumper to bumper LA traffic.
Mm.
So I fell in love with it. I started to wonder, I let my mind wander and I started to wonder, like, who are these people? Are these grown ass men? Are they kids? Like, are there girls out here painting? Like, do they have jobs? Why are they? risking their life and freedom to get their name up on the 101.
Right. Were you
Like
wondering,
there's
like, is this even legal?
no, I knew it was illegal.
Okay.
That I knew.
Okay.
Um, but I just wondered, like how and when and how many
Mhm.
of them. And I just had so many questions about the execution of it. Um, and I fell in love with just like the color on the wall. And in that time where I found myself at home a lot more, I didn't want to waste my hours on unconstructive things like video games or scrolling
Yeah.
through Instagram or TikTok. I do enough of that. So I decided to pick up some art supplies from the local art store, and I made these geometric engineering paintings. I might actually, it's probably going to take me too long to find it in here, but this is like a loose leaf version of the book, so
Cool.
it's all out of order. I made these promotional videos that I had these pages flying at my face, and so these are all the loose pages that I've scooped up off the floor 100 times. But I did these like really engineering paintings, and they were me at the time, but they were boring and they were like very technical, and I didn't love them, but I loved painting. Like I knew I loved the the process of just getting lost in the composition and spending hours and hours trying to make this thing work
And was
and
that the
forgetting
first time
everything
that you
else.
were painting though? Like when you picked up those art supplies, was that the first time you felt that sensation?
Yeah, I'd never painted on canvas before. I had only ever, as a 15-year-old, scurried around and did a couple little tiny, cute stencils at home, but
Right.
never took that out of the backyard.
Wow.
And it was never a deeper concept than just like wanting the instant gratification of seeing something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the first time I had really gone through that process, and I fell in love with it immediately. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I did. So I still had that job designing houses, and going. That was going. Um, it afforded me like a lot of flexibility and lifestyle that I needed desperately at that time to kind of like rediscover who I was as
Hmm.
like a professional and creative adult. And I filled my apartment with canvases that I had painted. Like I filled the walls up,
Yeah. And you have
corner to
high
corner.
ceilings. You have really high ceilings.
I have a two-story loft situation, so I have really high ceilings, big walls, and I filled them. And I realized immediately that A, it was getting expensive because these
Yeah.
big ass canvases are not cheap, and art supplies are not cheap.
How much is a big canvas?
It can be over $100. I mean, it could be
Wow.
something like 3 feet by 3 feet, even can be
Wow.
upwards of $120. So you look for sales and stuff, or you buy in bulk, or you
Yeah.
like repurpose old stuff. But yeah, so it was adding up, and there was no plan. It was just like I love doing this. I'm just gonna keep doing it.
Hmm.
And I realized like somebody's gonna have to see this eventually. If nobody ever sees this, then I'm gonna keep repainting these 20 canvases like for
Right.
the rest of my life. And that doesn't seem like necessarily a good use of my time and money if I really want to do this as more than a hobby.
I mean,
So
when you started painting and you were just like doing it in your house and stuff, like, were you like, I'm good at this?
no,
Okay. I'm just
no,
curious. Like, what
never
was
was I
your
like, I'm good
mindset
at this.
of,
I was like, I just enjoy the meditative process of getting lost in this thing, in this act of creation. I
okay.
love how my mind is not moving at a million miles an hour. It's moving at 5 miles an hour, and it's on one task at a time. It's sort of allowing me to be very present.
Hmm.
Which in my life at the time was something that I really needed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And even just like the act of creating a painting provided the structure for my mind to just sort of quiet down.
Yeah, that's
And from
beautiful.
a mental health perspective, it was really beneficial. From a talent perspective, I thought I was horrible, and I felt like such an engineer. line was measured with a ruler
Mm.
and like a protractor. It was like an engineering drafting drawing. It wasn't like a fluid organic piece of art.
Yeah, I feel like no matter what you begin, anything that you begin, everyone thinks that they're horrible at it and they feel horrible at it. And then when did you realize that you weren't horrible at it?
Only recently,
Ah,
like only very recently. And we'll probably get there
yeah.
like down the road, but when I painted the mural after my father passed away, after Jerry passed, um I did that like 3 days after or something. It was like really fast. Um and as I was painting it, I was feeling the geometry of his face in 3D, and I was painting it
Wow.
like the movement of the can and like the way that I was applying the aerosol to the wall was as though I was like touching his physical face. And it was so easy. Like it was such a natural, I didn't think at all in making that piece. And it went so fast. Like I did that in 2 days,
Yeah.
under 12 hours of painting. And it was my favorite, the best piece that I had done to that time. And I walked away from that feeling like, okay, I can paint anything. Like everything that I've
Wow.
been doing, every piece that I've created and doubted and walked away from, like, mm, that might have been better than the last one, but that's not it. Like we're not at the standard that we want to push up to. When I did that piece, I said to myself, like, okay, you're at that level now where you can, everything that you've done led you to this point to give you the ability to do this important thing at that time. And now you have like in real time, if somebody says,
Mm.
I have 1,000 square foot wall for you and I need it started tomorrow, I could rock and I could like, it'll be great. So
Whoa.
it's almost trial by fire.
It was almost like your dad's passing and you doing that gave you the belief in yourself that you needed. That's fucking nuts and beautiful
Yeah, for
and
sure.
sad.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's like it's wild to reflect on, the relationships that we have with our parents and the ways that they affect us even outside of our consciousness. I think um consciously I had one relationship with him and it's kind of meta, but like you have a certain relationship with the relationship that you have with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's almost part of your identity is like the relationship that you have with your parents.
Yes.
Like if you're a mama's boy or like you don't talk to your parents or you're like, whatever it is, I feel like there's a layer of people in their, full persona where like that's a box that I look at. It's like, what is the dynamic between you and your parents? I don't want the specifics, but like, and then like, what do you think that that is? Like, I have a friend who, I don't know if I should tell the story because he's like one of the 5 people who will definitely watch this.
Well, what's yours? What was your relationship to your relationship with your dad, and how did that
I
impact? How does
thought
that?
I thought it was a lot healthier than I realized it was, I guess, after the fact. Like
Mhm.
I think when I noticed like a cognitive decline, I thought that I had changed my relationship or I thought that I felt like a paradigm shift in our dynamic where I went from being like caretaken to caretaker. And I no
Mm.
longer wanted or needed any advice or validation from him, but felt instead like I just wanted him to authentically sort of enjoy what I was doing and enjoy like the rest of his life. Um, that said, I don't think that I was able, sorry, 1 second. I don't think that I was able to actually decouple like myself from his validation until way after he passed. Like
Mm.
I think that I was still very much wrapped up in this idea that everything I do needs to be approved by my father.
Oh.
up until the very end. I mean, even up until after he was gone. And I realized like, oh, I'm not going to get that approval. Like that
Right.
approval is never going to come.
Wow. I have the
So
chills. I feel like that is so relevant for so many people, including myself, because I feel that way about my mom. And like, wow, it's so wild to hear you say that because it's validating to know that other people feel that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to even come to these realizations that take so much time because you can't, as you go through stuff in life, like your initial reaction and response is going to be, a native version of where you end up years later, and the way that you're able to sort of reflect on things as they change. I think my relationship with loss, my relationship with my parents has evolved so much in the last couple of years.
Hmm. How do you think that not getting that validation, like decoupling that, as you said so beautifully, has impacted your work?
Has been a huge shift for me. I think validation structures are really important to just understand on a deeper level. I don't know that there is like a right recipe. And I think that different people will have different validation structures that are valid to them, similar to love language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but on a personal level, I had developed weird validation structures that were not serving me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in my personal life and my professional life. And they, as an artist, I think one thing that I've really had to adapt to is the fact that work-life balance doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Your off time is direct inspiration to the time that you're working. Um, and your friendships and relationships overlap both those worlds all the time.
Yeah.
So work-life balance is very hard. So like those validation structures overlap both the personal life and the professional life a lot.
Mm.
For me, I was validated by like my parents' approval and by sex. So um, neither of those things were internally driven. And when I shook the first one, which was parental approval by necessity, because my father literally passed away,
Yeah.
it forced me to examine the whole thing. So that was when I realized that I had this relationship with touch and with sex and with physical validation that was also not serving me on a deeper personal, emotional, creative level,
Mm.
that I had to like really invest the time and work to adjust that, um, and consciously change that, to own my own power as an artist and creative and be like, no, no, anything that I create is rad. Like this is
Yes.
genuinely rad because I think it's rad.
Wow. Thank you
That's
so
it.
much for
Like that's
sharing.
the shift. That's the whole thing that's changed. Is like this is rad because I think it's rad.
Self-validation.
Mhm.
Wow. I
And
have
it
so many.
allows you to stand 10 toes on anything that you're talking about. You're not like iffy. Like, this, I think this is cool. Like, I think this is cool, but I don't know, like this person might not like it. It's like, no, this is fucking cool. And here's why.
Yeah, just owning it fully
Mhm.
with certainty and conviction and just an inner knowingness that it's rad because you say it is. I just did a whole episode on drinking your own Kool-Aid. I'm like, stop drinking
Oh
everybody
yeah.
else's Kool-Aid. Like, drink your own Kool-Aid because you're fucking cool.
Yeah. Don't be an arrogant piece of shit, but like stand on the things that you believe in and create for sure.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, confidence over cocky, definitely. So, how did you, I'm just curious, like, what was what was the mind shift that had to happen there for you to like, was it simply becoming aware of like, oh, I'm looking for validation and physical touch from other people or sex from other people, and like I'm aware that I want this right now, so I'm going to like pause in the moment? Is it like a moment by moment practice, or was there something that you had to do or something that shifted that helped you kind of break free of that?
I think that's really specific, actually. So I run really hard and fast and straight a lot of the time, or not, maybe not straight, but I just like run really hard and I'll crash into a wall and then I'll course correct.
Okay.
So like my method of learning a lot of the time is like through failure or through some
Trial and
sort
error.
of trial and error or having something not go well, and then trying to avoid that same outcome in the future. So in this case, it was the same thing. I was actively seeking validation, um, from somebody that was in a position in my life to provide that at that time
Mm-hmm.
in that structure that I had created for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and since I was externally reliant on that, that person had the power to not be able to give it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reasons, they couldn't give it to me. And when you're in such deep need of something like that, and the only person in the world who could give it to you is not giving it to you, it led me to like a darker darkness than I even thought was possible in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And reflecting on my anger and frustration in that moment, some of it directed at that person, but a lot of it directed at myself for like believing in that person or for thinking that that person would have had the wherewithal to hold me up, and almost being frustrated with myself for needing that person to hold me up when it really isn't their job. Like if somebody put that on me,
Yeah.
I might want to do it out of love, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
my job to hold somebody else up emotionally. We just can't do it. We only have so much bandwidth for the things that we, try to do. Um, so I got really upset. Like it really hurt me deeply, and I was angry, mostly like at myself and somewhat at towards that person, but that was more of like a childish resentment
Yeah.
than like a deep-seated anger. Um, and then I had to like very consciously and mindfully uh remove myself from that relationship and from all relationships. So day by day then, when the thoughts and feelings and urges would come up to like hit somebody up to like get that thing that I needed, um, I would just cry instead. Like I would just let that like work run through me for
Wow.
2 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it was, like whatever it needed to be.
Yeah.
I would just let it wash through me. And then by the time it passed, I'm good. Like I don't need that anymore.
Wow. That is really, really so deep to share and just like makes so much sense to allow it to move through you. Like you literally moved the energy yourself. You didn't need someone else to help you move it.
For sure. And I just trusted that, like, these emotional states are never permanent.
Yeah.
Happiness is never permanent. I mean, like elation and feeling like you're on top of the world, even when great things happen, like that is such a transient feeling. And the same is true for the negative emotions that we go through in life, like sorrow and loneliness and pain, and all of those things are transient emotions. So um that was a big part of my mindfulness journey, was understanding that like these things that hurt, that we all do different things to anesthetize, they will pass. And if we can sort of just allow ourselves to be present through them for a while, then we realize like we don't need to dope up to
Mm.
like get through a spell of like a feeling that's not pleasant.
Wow. That's deep. Thank you so much for sharing that. I fucking love that. And it's so true. And I'm curious, like, if that has been kind of your journey with grief too, like navigating the grief of losing your dad, like just feeling your emotions. It sounds like you're not afraid to feel.
No, I'm not, but I do keep it to myself a lot.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely something that I've become aware of, is when I'm around other people, especially people I don't know, really anybody, I hold it in, and then when I'm alone, I can let it out, just
Yeah.
like with me, which is probably good and healthy. But I do sort of like
Hide it.
seem pretty stoic, I think,
Hmm.
on the surface, and then when I'm alone, I do let that stuff out.
Yeah. And what do you think would happen if you weren't? Like, why do you feel like you have to hide that or be stoic about it?
I don't know. I don't know that I do need to. I think it's been interesting. Everybody deals with with like loss and grief differently, but for me, dark humor and like making people shockingly uncomfortable about it has been really helpful because it's already awkward and uncomfortable. And unfortunately, and this was a surprise, like I'm 32 now, none of my peers know what it's like to lose a parent. None. Like I have two friends that have lost a parent and their experience was so different that they can't even actually relate.
Because they were probably a lot younger.
Yeah, they were a lot younger and it was different. What were we talking about before that?
Just how you let the grief move through your body.
Oh yeah, and like not showing emotions
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, so like people get really awkward about it and I've sort of held like I don't want people to treat me weird because they're like they don't know how to be around me because they don't
Hmm.
know where I'm at with the grief thing. So I'll like sort of aggressively disarm people with like
Hmm.
sadistic jokes about the situation so that they're like, all right, everything's fine.
Mm. It's almost like you're too self-aware.
Yeah, welcome to my brain.
Yeah. I mean, we were at a funeral earlier and we're standing in line and Todd said to me, like, what do I say? Do I just say I'm so sorry? And I said, what's in your heart? Like none of this is like we don't nobody knows what to say in these situations, just say what's in your heart. That's it. Like that's all you can do. I mean, it is
What did he
tough to
say?
navigate. What did he say? I'm so sorry for your loss. I usually say like I'm just holding you in so much love and like today I was like this is fucked up. That's what I said.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. I mean, having been like the one in that position of like the person that people come up to and they have to like
Yeah.
say the thing that they've been thinking in the car, like this is what I'm gonna say. Ask me how many things I remember people saying to me that
No.
day. Zero. Not
Zero.
one, not one thing. Like my mom has no idea who was even there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was like an out of body experience. Like
Right. You're
we were
just
like
still in a state
not,
of shock. Your body is so dysregulated. You're not,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's funny, it's like another one of those things where it happens to all of us all the time where we're so worried about how we come across to people
Yeah.
that like they don't care. Like nobody actually gives a shit. Like you could
Right.
really walk into most situations and say the most ridiculous things and nobody will bat an eye.
No. No, it's
And they
so
won't think
true.
about it on their way home either. It just won't even register.
Yeah, it's so true. I used to like get up in a yoga training and share something vulnerable. I would think about it for like the next 24 to 48 hours. Like rack my brain like, "Oh, you sounded like a fucking idiot. Like why would you say that? Oh my God." And like
And someone the
making
next
it
day was like, I love your earrings yesterday. And you're like, great.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy how self-centered so many of us are because we think it's just the spotlight's on us. It's all about us all of the time. And like I tell this to my coaches that I train and people that listen to the show, it's not whatever your service is to the world, it's really not about you. It is about you, but it's not. It's about the legacy that you're leaving. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. On some dark shit. I mean, not to get too dark, but I do think about that. Like I think about if I life is so unpredictable
Yep.
sometimes, and I've just seen we've all seen it where today someone's here today and gone tomorrow, whether it's a friend or a celebrity or a family member. Um, and I've had close calls where I didn't look both ways before I crossed the street, and I stepped
Yep.
back and I almost got hit by a bus, and like that was on me. Like there was no like that would have just been my stupidity that would have led me off of this plane, just like in a heartbeat, right? So I think about that, like what if that were to, God forbid, happen, if I were to sort of vanish tomorrow, what would be left behind? Like what is my legacy?
Yeah.
And with the art stuff, it's nice because there's some like physical things,
Yeah.
that like speak to a mentality and a
Right. And what you believed
and
in.
a process and a texture and a set
Mhm.
of beliefs, and
Yeah.
like it's very tangible. So that's a big motivator a lot of the time for me to create stuff sometimes where I'm like, if I'm not feeling it, I'm like, well, you may not be here forever, so you might as well put out as much as you can while you are.
Yeah. Wow. I think that that's a good place to go because it sounds like it's actually motivating for you, you know?
Yeah.
Wow. So I know that you got arrested. I actually didn't know that before we talked before this episode. I didn't know that you got arrested.
Oh, well, I'm free now.
Thank God. When did you get arrested?
I got arrested right before the COVID shutdown. So it was January 2020. I think it was like January 14th or something because my birthday was on the 10th. I was on a podcast on the 11th, a street art podcast, bragging about all of my close calls with the cops and how I got out of it every single time. And I was like so good at talking my way out, and told this story about how I almost got in trouble, but I like talked my way out of it. 2 days later, of course, right? Like put it out into the universe, and I
Mm-hmm.
manifested my own arrest. And it was a stupid situation, really. Like it was a bad choice by me, and like situationally, it was unlikely that anything would have come of it. But everybody made their choices that night, and I ended up in jail for painting illegally on an electrical box in Hollywood. It
Wow.
was 11 o'clock at night when I did it. I was in jail by midnight. Um, and I was in a jail cell with 5 roommates,
Oh my God.
and I had never been in jail before. Like I had never been booked. I had never like gotten a ride in the back of a police car. I had never like the whole thing was very unfunny to me. The cops were laughing the whole time. They thought it was hilarious. I was horrified. Um, so they book you, and the whole process is very cold and inhumane, and they make you immediately like they strip you of your humanity, um, and throw you in like a metal and concrete box, and it really sucks. Like the soundscape is oppressive, and the lighting is oppressive, and it's cold, and it sucks.
You don't want to
So
be there.
you don't want to go there. I mean, really, like they make it as bad as possible, so like you are incentivized to not go. Um, I also like am not the biggest dude, so I had these like weird fears in my mind about like going to jail and like being physically unsafe in that environment.
Hmm.
So I had my head shaved at the time. I looked like a hard ass little whatever graffito. I probably had like a little more of a mustache shadow, so I looked like ambiguously it could have been anyone or anything.
Yeah.
And I put on this persona of just like I just killed 17 people. Like do
Stop.
not do not fuck with me. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Like I am ready to continue my murder spree. That was like the look that I had on my face.
Holy
And
crap.
I like held this demeanor of like some murderous Buddhist ninja guy, and like sat with my legs crossed, like in this like meditative back straight position on a top bunk. Like I did not want anyone to talk to me or fuck with me.
Oh my God. Wow.
So I sat like that for 3 hours until I realized like nobody in my cell was gonna be weird.
Yeah.
And I finally was like, I also thought that maybe because of like the nature of the crime, there was a chance that they would let me out that night, and then give me a court date, and like,
Be done.
I would have to go through the legal process, but I didn't think that they were going to keep me in jail for that. But they did. So they had no intention of releasing me, and I realized that after a few hours. So I swallowed my pride, and at 3 in the morning, I picked up the jail phone and I called my parents' house, called the house phone. And my mom answers and she's like half asleep. And obviously, like when you call from jail, like you hear collect call from Hollywood County Jail or whatever,
Oh
like
my God.
whatever the thing is, right? So like she obviously knew, like we had had this conversation. I had been painting in the streets for like a year before anything happened. And I told them like this is gonna happen. I'm gonna get in trouble one
There's a
day.
chance. Yeah.
It's eventually it's gonna. I'm gonna like keep doing this. I'm gonna keep pushing it until like I'm probably gonna get in trouble. I think the first time, like it won't be so bad, and then we'll go from there.
Wow.
And they were like, okay, well, I respect it. Um,
Wow.
I also like there wasn't really a choice. Like I was just gonna do it.
Yeah.
So it was better that I told them.
Right. No,
So when she
that's
got the
smart.
call, they got the call, like they weren't surprised. Like she was like, who is this? And I was like, it's me. And she's like, Jared? And I'm like, yeah. Because I didn't want to say any information because I had all these roommates behind me and I didn't want to
Yeah.
be like the
Yeah.
like soft white boy who got like in trouble for some spray paint, like a little stencil, like I wanted them to think I was a hardened criminal at that moment. So she's like, what did you do? And I was like, you know what I did. And so I'm like trying to sound all scary.
That's hilarious. Oh my God.
And so she's like, all right, where are you? So I gave her all the information and they had to go rescue my car because it was parked. They'll tell you the story offline, but they had to go get my car. And like, so I get off the phone and one of my roommates who I thought was asleep, I thought everyone was asleep in the cell. As soon as I hang up the phone, they're like, hey, what time is it? And I was like, oh shit, I, I don't even know. Like, it didn't even occur to me that like people don't know what time it is in jail because you don't. They don't
Yeah.
have clocks, or there is a clock, but like it's somewhere where you can't really see it, and
What?
it's fucked up. Like the mind games they play with you in jail are messed up. So like nobody knew how long they'd been there in the cell. So I like asked the guy, I asked the guard when he walked by, but man, my parents came an hour and a half later and they bailed me out and they took me to Denny's at like 5 in the morning
Oh my God. They're the
and
best.
they were not mad and they were mad at getting some lip from the charge officer at the desk when they got there.
Did they
Like
have to like pay money to get you out?
yeah, so it my bail was $1,000 and the way it works is you post bail and if you show up for court you get your money back.
Oh,
So like that's the point of bail is just to make sure that you show up to court.
okay. Interesting. Never knew
Because
that.
basically when you once you go to court, like you're in custody
Yeah.
like while your trial is happening.
Hmm.
But if you
Hmm.
post bail, like the second you don't show up, then you lose all that money. For most
Right.
people, it's a lot more than $1,000.
Right.
We ended up getting it back, but yeah, you have to come up with $1,000 in cash. Like you can't like Venmo it.
Wow. So what did you learn from that experience?
Um, I don't want to go back to jail for sure.
I mean, aren't there cops rolling around like as you're painting all the time?
Yeah, but they're like the police. They're not the art police. And that's the thing is like there's so much legitimate art that happens all the time on the street. Like businesses pay to commission artists and muralists, or the city has opportunities, or artists will just walk in and talk to a business owner and get permission to paint it, or other artists will give other artists walls. Like there's so much legitimate art activity happening all the time.
Oh, I
Police
see.
can't be going around and asking every single person painting if they have permission and if they have this or that. It's like you know, their
Yeah,
job's not to police the art. Their job is to make sure like people aren't getting their purses snatched or people aren't getting raped and murdered and like
I see. I got
that
you.
kind of stuff. So
So when you do it in the middle of the day, it's almost more legit than like doing it sneaking out at
that was
night.
what I learned. Well, I already knew that. And when I say like I made a stupid decision for several reasons, part of it was I went against my code. Like I got away with it for a year by doing it by myself in broad daylight because nobody thinks that you're not supposed to be there.
Right, 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 right. So
And
interesting.
I'll publicly say that like, everybody knows that and nobody can do anything about it because again the police it's not their job to be the art police.
Right, right. That makes sense.
But if it's late at night and you look sketchy and you're like on city property like
Mhm.
you're gonna have to answer some questions.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, you learn. I didn't really learn that because I went against like my own rules that night and I got in trouble and
Mhm.
I was just like wow, that was stupid. um but I also did dedicate myself to my practice in a way that motivated me to create a quality of work that people actively wanted on their walls so I didn't have to force myself on people.
Yeah, that's really good.
So if I could like make my work good enough to always have permission, then I would never get arrested again.
Hell yeah. So right now, I know that you've created a book of your work. Tell us about the book.
And the book is a retrospective of my first 5 years of creating art, both on the street and in my studio
Okay.
practice. Um, I have explored infinite styles over the years, and I haven't committed to one. And I've done so many different series throughout this body of work that each one might individually be something that is uniquely identifiable as like a KarPart piece.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't loved any of those series enough to devote my entire career to creating that thing that is, like uniquely identifiable as mine. I'm so afraid of that as like getting pigeonholed as an artist into one thing, which works really well on the business side, but like I would get bored and die so fast.
Yeah. I
Um,
hold on that note, I think that's just like a really important nod to everyone listening where I, just like a permission slip to not have to put yourself in a box. And like maybe that is your thing.
100%. And it's really hard to own that because people are constantly telling you, oh, you're like this, or this is like that, or you should be like that, or you should emulate this person's career. And really, you do not know what backing any of those people had, or where they started out, or how they got to where they are. But I can assure you that their trajectory is not going to be the same as yours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, on that note, like don't definitely don't let anybody put you in a box if it feels like you don't belong in one.
Yeah.
Um, it is okay also to like belong to like a movement or a genre if it really resonates with you and that's your style. Like it's totally cool to own that. But that wasn't me. And as like a new artist on the street, it's been really difficult to communicate who I am and what I'm about because I don't have that like one cohesive thing.
Like a signature.
Um,
I feel like one of your signature things are the ones where like it's the head where like there's like multiple layers to it.
yeah, the totems.
The
And
totems.
there's a there's a chapter, some writing in the book about why I moved away from the totems. And it has to do with exactly that, which is getting pigeonholed and being known as the totem guy. Like everybody knew me for that and they wanted that and they expected that. And I just fundamentally wanted to create other stuff. I was just like over that. These are them for anyone curious.
Yes. They are so cool.
Thank you. I do have like all of these loose pages of the book
I
handy,
love
so I
it.
can every so often I can find like a reference image based on what we're talking about. So yeah, I had all of these different things, and the book felt like the first time in 5 years where I was able to very cohesively like put a ribbon around who I am, what I'm about, what my approach is, um, and what this brand really is. And if you look at the entire body of work as a whole, it actually makes sense in like the context of like who is KarPart and what is KarPart about and how would you begin to recognize KarPart in the wild or in the gallery um,
Wow.
because I help sort of my audience and my future audiences understand the things that have always been there, but they've been detached from each other. So now it's all in one place and in one like very intentional narrative that I've been able to weave together.
I can't wait to get my copy.
Oh yeah. Thank
I'm
you for
so
being part of
excited.
the pre-sale that made it possible to get like the larger volume of books manufactured.
So excited for you and for me, for everyone who
Thank
picks it
you.
up at my house. So, how did you come up with the name CarPart? Obviously, you're Jared Karp. What am I not seeing?
Art part. No, you got a lot farther than most people get. Like even when I tell people my name is Jared Karp, they're like, okay. And I'm like, it's carp art. It's my carp art. So it's like the art of carp,
Oh,
but I just moved the P over by
so good.
one.
Got it.
So it's KarPart, but it's really carp art. It's just like
Oh my God,
my
I
art.
will never unsee that now. Thank you.
Where's the
I'll never
cover?
unsee that now. So
Yeah,
what do
here.
you what what if you had like one message that you could share with the world around specifically around like manifestation, like manifesting your life in the direction of what you want to create, even when it doesn't make sense or even when it doesn't feel secure or anything that you want to share a note on that. I think that would be really helpful.
The biggest lesson that I've learned in the past couple of years is that the way I say it is the shit don't paint itself. You know, like anytime I find myself waiting for the universe to drop an opportunity in my lap, or I expect that the hand of God is going to find me, I'm wrong. And I end up hungry. It is only when I internally derive the the work and I put in the time and I set the intention and I motivate myself and I make a thing that I believe in, that's when those external actors start to enter into the play that is my life. Only when I do the work and I drive that energy outward does it come back in. So anytime my advice is just like if you find yourself sitting and waiting to be discovered, or you're waiting for your opportunity, or you're waiting to be noticed, it's not going to happen for you. I'm really sorry, but you have that power to drive that energy towards yourself by putting it out into the world.
Mm, so potent. What makes, I mean, that might be your answer, but I ask everyone, what makes you a badass manifester?
It sucks to say, but I'm really good at strategy.
Okay.
And I think vision matters a lot. I think vision is a skill that is innate for a lot of people, and it is developable, and it's really difficult to develop, but you can.
Yeah.
But without vision, I don't think that you really can manifest anything. Like if you can't see where it is that you want to go and how you might be able to get there, like I said, you're just asking the universe to give it to you, and it won't without priming it. You have to prime the universe. Um, and I think that you strategically need to understand the obstacles that are going to come up in your journey from where you are to where you want to go.
Mm,
So without necessarily having everything that it takes to solve them, because it takes two to tango or three to tango in certain situations, you have to be as sort of structurally prepared as possible to manifest whatever it is that you want. And don't undersell that part of it, which is the work that you have to do.
that's awesomely said. Do you believe that you're the creator of your reality?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy to see if you take yourself out of context for any extended amount of time and you find yourself in a country that doesn't speak English, or in a small village somewhere. Your experience is fully shaped by your attitude.
Yeah.
100%.
That's such an
And that's
interesting.
always true. It's just we fall into these defaults in our communities that we grow up in and live in.
Wow. What's next for you as far as like your vision? Like where are you going next?
So I feel like I'm entering my veteran era as a muralist and as an artist, um, where I finally can speak um, intelligently about what I do. And um, it's been very difficult to develop narrative um, as a straight white male
Hmm.
these days. It feels like you need to have a trauma, or you need
Yeah.
to have a disadvantage for society to care about you and what you have to say. But I think that everybody has perspective, and finding my perspective has been like the most exciting part of what I've been working on over the last even 6 months, I would say. And so carrying that forward into the next 5 years of this journey, um, I think is a huge opportunity to unlock the power of storytelling for bigger organizations that I haven't yet gotten the chance to work with, like big companies, and partnering on the commercial side, collaborating with institutions that have the wherewithal to reach millions of people,
Yeah.
and then leveraging like my skill set as a corporate communicator and a creative communicator and as an artist to help bridge that gap, and do like a lot more of that, whether it's through my own art or through curation and community building. I'm really excited because I feel like I speak the language now fluently on both sides to actually operationalize that. And then I want to paint full size sides of buildings like 70 feet tall, 7 stories,
Wow.
um, all over the world. Like I want to be painting the sides of apartment buildings in Romania and, just like random. I want to be in mural festivals, and I just want to explore the world and connect with cultures and people everywhere because that's what lights my fire.
Mm-hmm.
And do what I love in the process and connect with like-minded people. And this industry allows that mobility when you get to a certain point. And I feel like I've just sort of reached that threshold, um, both in time and putting in the work and reputation and then quality and
And I would
portfolio.
also add to that and say like the inner work that you've done on yourself is also, I believe, a direct reflection of the life that you are creating right now. And
For sure.
that self validation and acceptance of your radness and your work and like owning it, I feel like that also really elevates your energy and it makes you more magnetic to be able to like attract these opportunities.
100%. Yeah, that's that manifestation power is. That's what I mean by like owning your own energy. And, if you're the source, then like you will also be the sink because like energy wants to find equilibrium. So people will bring stuff to you.
Yeah, so good. Oh my gosh, I love this interview. This was fun. This was far from boring. I feel like this was really good.
It was never going to be boring.
I mean, obviously. I'm like, what is it? I mean, obviously, we live on opposite sides of the country from each other, and we don't keep in touch that much, but obviously, we know we're connected. And you knowing me growing up, and I knowing you growing up, like, I look at you and I'm like, oh my God, like, this is so fucking awesome. Like, I look at your Instagram, I look at everything you're doing, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm so blown away by what you've created, what you do, how you live, like how you think, how you speak. I'm really, I'm blown away by you.
Thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I've looked up to you my whole life. So nothing's different. It's cool to be able to be adults and, you know, connect on like a deep level about all the things that life throws at us more
Mm,
than like, kid stuff or teenager stuff.
yeah.
Just like we get to really walk through the complex realities of this experience.
Yeah. This life experience. I feel like our family in and of itself is just, we're all very deep and we all have a lot of work to do internally. And it is nice to be able to like relate on that too, because there's so much like just family stuff. I mean, there's so much healing that's happening in this generation of like you're doing your work, I'm doing my work, our other cousin's doing her work, like everyone's doing their own work. And I feel like,
Our parents didn't really do their work. Like it's
right.
interesting because like they didn't.
No,
Like
they didn't.
they just have their trauma and then they like dump it on us and like
Right.
it just is what it is. Like they're doing the best that they can now,
Yes. And
but
like
they're not changing.
they're probably gonna listen to this. So we love you.
We love you. We know what we're dealing with and we love
We
you.
we know what we're dealing with, and that's why you had us.
Hmm.
to be
Exactly.
able to transcend all of this stuff. I feel like we could do a whole nother episode on family trauma.
Yeah, we didn't even have to get into it.
Yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface there, but
I know.
yeah, there's a lot there, and
Yeah.
it's just it's beautiful to be able to have these conversations and just see each other in I see you in your light, you see me in mine, and it's just, yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm so excited for this. Okay, cool. So where can everyone get, like, find you, follow you, buy your book, or commission with you?
As long as Instagram exists, that is the best place to find a repository of all of my work actively, the things that I'm really proud of creating in real time.
Yeah.
I post to my story almost every single day with the things that I'm doing behind the scenes of like my life and my process. So a lot of my audience knows to check my story to keep up with me in real time. And then I post on Instagram. My handle is KarPart, KAR underscore PART. But if you don't put the underscore, it'll probably still come up first. And so Instagram is good. Yeah, follow me there for sure. I have a website. It's KAR dash P dot art. KAR dash P dot art. It's KarPart again. I just keep using KarPart, which
That's
again is
smart.
like my
That's a smart
name
business
and
move.
art. My book is available through a link on my Instagram, or also if you go to my website, it'll take you right to the book.
Cool. Okay.
Um,
It's a really, really cool book.
there's a KarPart page on Facebook, which is not super active, but feel free to check it out. Um,
Cool. Thank
what
you.
else? I think that's it.
That's it. Just reach out to him on Instagram if you want to learn more. If you have a big ass building for him to paint, call him up. He'll do the
Oh
job.
yeah. So you were asking me before the call, like how do I price stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it varies a lot. So typically it's by square footage,
Okay. That's good
and
to know.
that's like the baseline. So it ranges from 25 to $50 a square foot, depending on the subject matter, creative flexibility, visibility of the wall, who the client is, that kind of thing.
That's really cool. How that makes perfect sense. Okay, that's good for everyone to know. Oh my gosh, thank you for this, for your time, for your energy,
Thank
for
you
your
for having
love.
me.
This was fun.
I'm a fan and consumer of your podcast.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. Would love for you to share with us what your favorite part was of KarPart, what your biggest takeaway was. Tag us, let us know. And until next time, keep being a badass manifester. Peace.
Peace.
Woo! We did some work today. Thank you so much for listening. You know I love my BAM fam. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you know would love it too, because we live for the ripple effect over here. And how can you best support the show? Make sure you're subscribed, hit the 5 stars, and leave a review on iTunes, and let me know how the podcast has impacted you. I love being part of your real-time journey, so screenshot the episode and tag me and my guests on Instagram at Manifest with Ash. Now say it with me. I am my own power source. I am the master of my own energy, and I deserve everything that I desire. We don't just talk about it over here, we be about it. Now go get 'em.